Welcome back to Twilight Tale, where history drifts softly into the night. Tonight, we journey beneath the bustling heart of ancient Rome to a realm few ever saw, but which shaped the empire's very soul. Hidden far below the marble streets were gateways, forgotten, silent, and carved with mysteries that have survived thousands of years. As you settle in and let your eyelids grow heavy, allow the echoes of these ancient passages to guide you into a deeper calm. This is The Forgotten Gates Beneath Ancient Rome, still whispering through time. Breathe slowly, relax, and let history become your lullaby. Beneath the soft veil of night, when the city settles into its own quiet breathing, there is an ancient hill that seems to lean gently toward the stars. The Palatine rises not as a monument of marble or memory, but as a shadowed cradle of stories older than the empire that once crowned it. And it is said that beneath this hill, beneath its roots of stone and centuries, a faint glimmer still stirs, a trembling thread of light, as if a hidden lantern continues to breathe beneath layers of Roman dust. It flickers in imagination like a candle sheltered by cupped hands, refusing to be extinguished even as the world above it has changed beyond recognition. Some believe that this glimmer belongs to a memory, or perhaps to a presence that never fully left the earth. Others say it is only the echo of old fire. Yet as we step closer, beneath the silence, the question rises like a slow exhale. Who placed a light in the earth long before the emperors rose? The descent begins with a single breath of cool air drifting from a narrow opening at the base of the hill. The entrance is unmarked, a dark slit framed by uneven stone, almost swallowed by ivy and soil. It does not announce itself. Rather, it waits, patient as sleep. When we step inside, the world above fades into a muted hum, and an older stillness unfolds around us, soft as dust settling upon forgotten scrolls. The passage curves inward like the spiral of a shell, and as our steps fall gently upon the earth, it feels as if we are walking down into the memory of the land itself. The walls bear the marks of hands long gone. They are not the sharp carvings of imperial artisans, but the softer strokes of a people who shaped stone the way one might shape clay. Lines intersect at odd angles, small crescents appear like moon marks pressed into the rock, and faint spirals wind across the surface with the rhythm of ancient breath. Whispers tell us that before Rome, before the hills were crowned with palaces, there were tribes who honored quiet skies and sacred springs, who listened to the earth as if it were a living teacher. Here in this passage, their presence lingers like incense in a long-abandoned temple. Farther in, the air thickens, warm and faintly sweet, as though fires once burned here and left behind an unspoken warmth. The chamber we approach reveals itself slowly, the way a dream reveals its heart. First, a faint glow, trembling like the reflection of starlight in shallow water. Then, the outline of a room, carved into the hillside, its ceiling low and curved, its floor smoothed by countless footsteps. The glow seems to pulse from a hollow in the stone, a shallow depression darkened by centuries, yet still shimmering faintly as though the memory of flame clings to its edges. It is here that the old hearth fires linger. Their echoes are not sounds, but sensations, the warmth against the skin, the scent of burning herbs, the soft murmur of voices that once gathered around these hidden flames. Some believe these fires were tended by guardians who watched the sky for signs and honored the unseen currents beneath the earth. No chronicles speak of them clearly, but fragments of pottery and the shape of the chamber suggest gatherings that were neither feast nor festival, something quieter, something sacred. Shadows unveil small relics as our eyes adjust. A bowl worn smooth by countless hands, resting in a bed of gray dust. A cracked clay seal marked with a symbol resembling a crescent cradling a small dot. A fragment of woven reed that once might have formed the edge of a basket. Each object feels like a whisper placed gently upon the ground, as if the ones who left them intended that they be found only by those willing to descend into silence. One relic stands out more than the others. A narrow gate crafted from stone, shaped in a graceful arc, its edges thinning into a crescent moon. It leans against the far wall, as though waiting for a purpose that never came. Its surface is etched with thin lines, too worn to decipher, yet suggestive of rising smoke or flowing water. Perhaps it once marked a passage into a deeper chamber. Perhaps it symbolized a threshold the living could not cross. Perhaps it was a gate only in spirit, meant to remind those gathered that every ending is merely a doorway into another mystery. Whatever its meaning, the gate seems to exhale its own stillness, like a silent guardian of forgotten dreams. As we step further into the space, the faint glimmer upon the ground shifts slightly, as though responding to our presence. It is not fire, not embers, not even light in the way we understand it. It is more like the echo of light, the memory of something luminous that once dwelt here. The dust around the hearth seems to have absorbed its glow, holding onto it the way old cloth holds the scent of incense. When we kneel beside it, the glow trembles faintly, as though stirred by a breath too ancient to name. It is said that early guardians believed the hill itself held a dreaming spirit, neither god nor ancestor, but something more elemental, a presence born from stone and root, from rainwater filtering through soil and the slow settling of the earth. The guardians tended the lantern not to illuminate the darkness, but to honor the spirit with quiet warmth. Fire was their language of devotion, a way to echo the light they believed lived within the hill. Whispers tell us that before Rome, before the hills were crowned with palaces, there were tribes who honored quiet skies and sacred springs, who listened to the earth as if it were a living teacher. Here in this passage, their presence lingers like incense in a long-abandoned temple. Farther in, the air thickens, warm and faintly sweet, as though fires once burned here and left behind an unspoken warmth. The chamber we approach reveals itself slowly, the way a dream reveals its heart. First, a faint glow, trembling like the reflection of starlight in shallow water. Then, the outline of a room, carved into the hillside, its ceiling low and curved, its floor smoothed by countless footsteps. The glow seems to pulse from a hollow in the stone, a shallow depression darkened by centuries, yet still shimmering faintly as though the memory of flame clings to its edges. It is here that the old hearth fires linger. Their echoes are not sounds, but sensations, the warmth against the skin, the scent of burning herbs, the soft murmur of voices that once gathered around these hidden flames. Some believe these fires were tended by guardians who watched the sky for signs and honored the unseen currents beneath the earth. No chronicles speak of them clearly, but fragments of pottery and the shape of the chamber suggest gatherings that were neither feast nor festival, something quieter, something sacred. Shadows unveil small relics as our eyes adjust. A bowl worn smooth by countless hands, resting in a bed of gray dust. A cracked clay seal marked with a symbol resembling a crescent cradling a small dot. A fragment of woven reed that once might have formed the edge of a basket. Each object feels like a whisper placed gently upon the ground, as if the ones who left them intended that they be found only by those willing to descend into silence. One relic stands out more than the others. A narrow gate crafted from stone, shaped in a graceful arc, its edges thinning into a crescent moon. It leans against the far wall, as though waiting for a purpose that never came. Its surface is etched with thin lines, too worn to decipher, yet suggestive of rising smoke or flowing water. Perhaps it once marked a passage into a deeper chamber. Perhaps it symbolized a threshold the living could not cross. Perhaps it was a gate only in spirit, meant to remind those gathered that every ending is merely a doorway into another mystery. Whatever its meaning, the gate seems to exhale its own stillness, like a silent guardian of forgotten dreams. As we step further into the space, the faint glimmer upon the ground shifts slightly, as though responding to our presence. It is not fire, not embers, not even light in the way we understand it. It is more like the echo of light, the memory of something luminous that once dwelt here. The dust around the hearth seems to have absorbed its glow, holding on to it the way old cloth holds the scent of incense. When we kneel beside it, the glow trembles faintly, as though stirred by a breath too ancient to name. It is said that early guardians believed the hill itself held a dreaming spirit, neither god nor ancestor, but something more elemental, a presence born from stone and root, from rainwater filtering through soil and the slow settling of the earth. The guardians tended the lantern not to illuminate the darkness, but to honor the spirit with quiet warmth. Fire was their language of devotion, a way to echo the light they believed lived within the hill. Whispers tell us these guardians watched the cycles of the moon with reverence, for they believed that in certain phases the dreaming spirit stirred, casting subtle signs across the land. A shift in the wind, a trembling in the leaves, a soft hum in the stone. They kept their rituals simple, offerings of water, fragments of woven grass, small bowls of grain, gifts meant not to appease, but to accompany. For them, devotion was companionship, not sacrifice. As the centuries passed, the guardians vanished. It is said that beneath the silence of the 7 hills, beneath their layered memories and softened stones, there lies a map that breathes like a faint whisper of moonlit air. Its lines are drawn in strokes so delicate they seem more imagined than crafted, more dream than ink. Whispers tell us it once rested within a hidden chamber of parchment keepers, a quiet enclave tucked beneath ancient pavement where scrolls were stored like sleeping spirits. Over centuries, its presence dissolved into rumor, then into near myth, yet the sense of it remains, a veiled atlas, waiting in the dust just beyond the reach of certainty. And tonight, as the city exhales into twilight, we drift toward those hills that rise like gentle giants, each one carrying secrets folded deep within its slumbering slopes. The invitation begins with a single fragment, a torn edge of parchment discovered long ago in an unmarked niche. Its surface held faint spirals, almost erased, as if traced by the breath of someone afraid to disturb the quiet. Some believe that these spirals were symbols of the seasons. Others say they represented the turning of the unseen heavens. But beneath the silence, the edges of the fragment seem to glow with a soft dusting of meaning, hinting at a larger atlas once laid out like a sacred pathway across the hills. As we follow the fragment's murmur, the night deepens. Torchlight flickers on distant walls, and the air grows heavy with the scent of stone and warm dusk. The 7 hills rise before us: the Palatine, the Aventine, the Caelian, the Esculine, the Viminal, the Quirinal, and the Capitoline. Each hill carries its own breath, its own quiet memory, as though these slopes were ancient waves frozen in time, rising and falling in gentle rhythm. In forgotten corners of the earth, hills are often said to hold the world's earliest dreams. Here, they hold the echoes of a city that grew like an unfolding scroll. We begin at the foot of the Capitoline, where shadows gather beneath worn stairways. The imagined map suggests that here, beneath layers of crumbled stone, lies a chamber once used by keepers of celestial lore, not astronomers in the modern sense, but watchers of signs, those who tracked the movements of stars the way others tracked the shifting of seasons. They marked the sky with gentle reverence, inscribing its patterns upon their veiled atlas. But the hill has grown thick with centuries, and whatever chambers once rested beneath it are now swallowed by dust. As we stand here, the lamps of the modern city feel distant, muted, like faint lanterns seen through layers of silk. The map draws us next toward the Palatine, its slopes rising with the calm dignity of a hill that has watched empires flicker like passing shadows. The outline of the imagined atlas suggests a gate drawn near its crest, not a physical gate, but a symbolic one, a gate of fortune, some say, for early legends speak of rituals performed upon these rises, ceremonies that called down blessings from the unseen. Priests would walk slowly, carrying vessels of grain and small bowls etched with star-marked symbols. Their procession was half ritual, half wandering, a journey meant not to reach a destination, but to echo the cycles of the heavens. As we ascend the path, the quiet wraps around us like a soft cloak. Stone walls rest in broken segments, and the night wind carries the faint scent of earth warmed by the day. Here and there, small fragments of tile, pottery, glimmer beneath the moonlight, reminders of lives lived long before us. And though the real map remains hidden, the imagined one unfurls in our thoughts, each step a line brushed across the parchment, each breath a soft trace of ink. The hills feel like living chapters. On the Kalian, the map suggests a chamber of fire, a place where ancient watchers tended flames in deep niches carved into rock. These were not fires of sacrifice, but of guidance, flames lit to reflect the shifting colors of the sky. When dawn approached, the flames flickered with pale gold. At dusk, they whispered with shades of copper and fading bronze. Some believe these were early attempts to capture the language of the heavens, to translate light into meaning. Others say they were simply acts of devotion, offered to whatever presence breathed through the land at that time. The Esquiline rises with a different energy. It is said this hill once sang, not with voices, but with wind. Its ridges were crowned with silver trees whose leaves shimmered under moonlight, creating a soft chorus as the night drifted through their branches. On the imagined atlas, this place is marked by a thin line, curling like the trail of a falling star. Some believe it represented a path taken by pilgrims seeking quiet wisdom. Others think it marked a boundary between the living and the dreaming. Whispers tell us the leaves once carried messages from those who walked the ridge, carried away on the breeze and delivered to distant ears who needed to hear them. From the Esquiline to the Aventine, the map becomes less certain. The lines fade, becoming softer, more tentative, as though the cartographer's hand hesitated. Perhaps the meaning was too delicate to record, or perhaps the knowledge was never meant to be fixed in ink. The Aventine has always held a sense of seclusion, a kind of hush within its slopes. It feels like a hill marked by the moon, touched by gentle silver at night and by the heavy warmth of sun during the day. Here, the imagined map speaks of hidden gardens, early sanctuaries, quiet places where offerings were left not to deities of power, but to those of peace and breath. These sanctuaries were said to be carved with spirals, each one representing a prayer released into the open sky. The Viminal and Quirinal rise like twin guardians, their slopes gentle yet watchful. The veiled atlas places small symbols upon them, barely visible, nearly erased, like footprints washed by rain. These hills are drawn with faint crescents, repeating across the parchment like soft echoes. Some say they represent the phases of the moon, guiding those who sought to understand the ebb and flow of life's quiet rhythms. Others think they marked ancient water routes, pathways of springs that once fed the earliest settlements. Beneath the silence, the meaning has silted into dust, yet the symbols linger in imagination like drifting embers. As we move among the hills, the night deepens. The stars above shimmer through thin clouds, and the air grows cooler, carrying the scent of cypress and warm stone. The city around us seems to fade, replaced by a version of itself that slumbers in memory, a quieter realm, softer than the one known by daylight. It is in this dreamlike state that the imagined map feels most present. Its lines pulse faintly, as though responding to the breath of those who walk beneath the moon. But the deeper we look, the less the map reveals. Its lines dissolve into stillness, its symbols retreat into silence. It becomes more absence than presence, more dust than meaning. And yet, the feeling of it remains, soft but undeniable, like the echo of a story told long ago. The hills shift in the night wind, their silhouettes blending with shadows, and for a moment they seem to lean gently toward one another, as if sharing secrets too old for language. We pause at the crest of the Quirinal, where the city stretches out like a darkened tapestry. The rooftops gleam faintly, the streets rest in muted quiet, and the moon drifts slowly overhead. The imagined map rests in our hands metaphorically, its edges curling inward like the petals of a flower closing at dusk. Its ink, if it ever existed, has retreated into obscurity. And the questions it raised, where the rituals were kept, how the watchers knew the stars, what truths lay folded between the hills, remain suspended in the soft space between wonder and forgetting. Whispers tell us that some knowledge slips away intentionally, seeking refuge in silence when the world grows too loud. Perhaps this atlas was one such knowledge, a guide not meant for certainty, but for contemplation. A map whose purpose was not to reveal, but to invite gentle wandering. As we stand among the moonlit hills, the final hush settles like a thin mist. The Palatine sinks into shadow. The Capitoline folds itself beneath soft darkness. The Aventine drifts into quiet sleep. One by one, the hills return to their ancient repose, the night drawing a gentle veil across their slopes. The imagined map fades with them. Its last lines soften until they are nothing more than breath against the memory of parchment. Its secrets drift back into the earth, into roots, into stone. Where memory fades, silence takes its place. And in that silence, a lingering sense remains, a feeling that knowledge once held here didn't vanish, but simply stepped into shadow, waiting for those who walk slowly, listen deeply, and trust the soft guidance of unspoken things. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was meant only to be felt. And as the night settles into stillness, the seven hills breathe their quiet stories once more into the dark, patient as stars waiting for dawn. It is said that sound behaves differently in places built for water. Even long after the waters have vanished, their memory lingers in the stone, held in secret pockets where echoes drift like wandering spirits. And so this chapter opens with a single tremor of sound, soft as a forgotten prayer, rising beneath the vast ruined arches of the Baths of Caracalla. It is the kind of sound one might imagine rather than hear, a faint ripple that seems to move through the ancient air of its own accord. Beneath the moon's pale gaze, the baths rest like a crumbled cathedral carved from silence itself. Moonlight drapes the ruined colonnades like a faded tapestry, its silver threads gliding along broken pillars and hollow corridors until every shadow feels touched by something sacred. We step forward gently, as though our footsteps could disturb the centuries. The ground beneath us is uneven, a mosaic of cracked tile and powdered stone. Warm waters once shimmered here, reflecting torchlight and drifting voices, but now the pools lie empty, their basins shaped like sleeping basins for ghosts. The night wind slips across them, stirring faint whispers where once steam would rise. In forgotten corners of the earth, there are places where memory dwells like a soft breath on old walls. Here, it feels as though even the dust carries remnants of song. The arches above seem impossibly high, stretching into sky as if yearning to catch the lingering starlight. Their curves echo the gentle sweep of ancient engineering, yet when the moonlight touches them, they feel almost celestial, gateways marked by the moon. We move beneath them in slow, meditative steps, as though participating in a ritual known only to those who walk through ruins at night. The hollow chambers around us drift further into stillness, drawing us deeper into their dreamlike embrace. Some believe that water remembers the voices it has touched. And in this place, where waters once held the reflections of emperors, travelers, poets, and wanderers, it is not difficult to imagine those voices rising again in soft currents of sound. Whispers tell us that if one stands still enough, breathes quietly enough, a faint murmur might return, the echo of an ancient conversation carried across time like a message sealed within a shell. We pause in a long hallway where the moon's glow pools in delicate fragments along the stones. The silence feels full, as though thickened by the weight of once was. Here, warm waters once flowed in gentle channels, guided by carved stone that glowed under torchlight. Those who walked this path felt heat rising from the stones like a living breath, steam drifting in graceful spirals, and the hush of water lapping against smooth marble. Now, only dust gathers in its place, the spiral patterns visible only in imagination, not in stone. Far across the hall, a faint echo trembles. It is not clear whether it is the sound of distant footsteps, the shifting of loosened stone, or the sigh of the cooling marble as it yields to the night air. It drifts through the passage like a soft reminder of presence. Where memory fades, echoes often remain, subtle, elusive, and quietly persistent. We step deeper into the baths, guided by the soft pull of darkness. The walls around us bear marks of age, cracks spreading like river branches, faded red ochre clinging to weathered plaster, fragments of mosaic clinging to stone like pieces of a forgotten star sky. Each fragment feels like a single note pulled from a larger melody, one that once reverberated through these halls when the baths were alive with movement. It is said that when the place was full, music seemed to travel across the waters, in slow arcs, the voices of bathers blending with the splash of fountains in a natural harmony. Tonight, there is only the faint echo, a pulse of sound from nowhere, a breath of resonance from somewhere between past and present. The baths seem to listen with us. Beyond the main chamber lies a wider hall where the moonlight filters through broken apertures in the ceiling. The stone pools, now dry, lie open like giant seashells waiting for tide or memory. The shadows glide across them gently, shifting with the wind. Here, the ancient structure feels almost oceanic, as though the entire space could be a sunken city lifted momentarily above water for the sake of memory. Some believe this hall was once a place where the sound of water mingled with chants, soft repetitions of words meant to ease the mind and release the weight of the day. It is in this hall that the myth begins to form around us. Scholars disagree on its origin, and the stories vary like mist shifting over stone. But whispers tell us that somewhere within the baths, perhaps beneath the main chambers, or along a corridor now buried in collapsed debris, there once existed a hidden room crafted with exquisite acoustics, a sanctuary of quiet harmonics, a place where tone and breath intertwined in gentle resonance, creating a space meant to soothe restless thoughts. Some describe it as a chamber carved with spirals, each designed to carry sound like a soft current. Others say its stone walls were shaped to mirror the arc of the heavens, catching faint vibrations from the world outside and sending them through the chamber like ripples across water. The myth suggests that those who entered the chamber heard tones so subtle they seemed to rise from within their own heartbeats, tones that calmed the restless mind and quieted the spirit. One tale claims that the chamber was used during times of tension, when a troubled mind might come seeking clarity in the soft acoustic embrace of stone. Another suggests that only a few priests knew of its existence, and that they used it in rituals that honored the unseen forces guiding the city. We follow the imagined shape of this chamber now, moving toward a darkened archway partially collapsed beneath centuries of weight. The air shifts as we step through. Cooler, more still, a single beam of moonlight cuts through a gap in the stone ceiling, falling upon the floor like a thin ribbon of silver. Dust floats in its path, shimmering faintly as though touched by celestial breath. The echo comes again, softer now, more drawn out, like a slow exhale from a slumbering giant. It seems to rise from beneath the floor, though we cannot be certain. Perhaps it is only the settling of stone. Perhaps it is something older, something patient. The corridor bends to the left, leading into a shadowed alcove. Here, the walls narrow, and the stones feel smoother beneath our fingertips. This place feels more secretive, less touched by open sky. The air is heavy with ancient dust, though not unpleasant. It feels like inhaling history, like drawing the breath of centuries into the lungs. At the end of the corridor, we find a small rotunda, its roof partially fallen, but still offering a hint of its original curve. The floor bears faint circular patterns, almost erased, but visible in the soft shimmer of moonlight. They coil, like spirals looping inward, as though guiding the mind towards deep reflection. It is here, many believe, that the hidden chamber might once have been. The architecture hints at intentional acoustics, the curve of the walls, the shape of the ceiling, the placement of the floor patterns. Even in ruin, the space hums faintly with potential resonance. When we stand still in the center, the echo gathers around us. It rises gently, like a distant song heard through layers of time. The sound is subtle, a single note that seems to drift through the air, barely there, but undeniably present. It hovers in the space between silence and memory, between stone and imagination. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. In the quiet of the rotunda, our own breath feels amplified, as though the chamber responds to presence. When we inhale, the air seems to stir slightly. When we exhale, the faint sound shifts in response. Whether this is true resonance or merely the mind playing on ancient suggestion, we cannot know. But the feeling is undeniable, a sense of communion with the space, a soft alignment of heartbeat, breath, and stone. For a long moment, we linger here. The baths around us seem to retreat, their colossal structures becoming distant silhouettes. The rotunda becomes the center of the world, a shell cupping echoes of forgotten rituals, a sanctuary where the dividing line between centuries dissolves into gentle dust. Then, slowly, the echo fades. It thins into silence, leaving behind only the soft rustle of distant wind through broken apertures. The air settles, the dust drifts downward, and the chamber returns to its long slumber. We step back into the corridor, then out into the main hall. The moon has shifted, casting new shadows across the ancient pools. The baths appear quieter than before, as though the echo we heard was never meant to be disturbed. The great arches rise around us like guardians of silence. The night grows deeper. Beneath the silence, the baths seem to whisper. Some knowledge is meant only to be felt, not understood. As we walk toward the exit, our footsteps carry faint resonances, soft impressions against the stone. The city beyond awaits, but the spell of the baths lingers, like warm breath on a cool night. We pause at the threshold one last time, listening. The air is still. The echo does not return. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was only meant to remind us that even in ruins, even in silence, the past sometimes speaks in tones softer than memory. And as we step back into the moonlit night, the baths of Caracalla settle once more into... It is said that some paths are not walked, but remembered, stirred awake by moonlight, summoned only when the night grows still enough for ancient footsteps to rise again. And so this tale begins with a pale path unfurling beneath the moon, a ribbon of worn stone stretching toward a sanctuary where fire once glowed without end. The air around it feels hushed, as though it carries the last warm breath of centuries. And upon that path rests a lone stone step, its surface smoothed by devotion, still holding the faint warmth of those who paused upon it long before Rome clad itself in marble and empire. This first step feels like an invitation, quiet as a whispered vow. The moon drapes the ground in silver, revealing the traces of a route once called the Vestal Way, a path walked by women whose lives were shaped by silence, flame, and sacred duty. In forgotten corners of the earth, such paths become more than stone. They become memories laid into the land. And as we drift along this one, slow and reverent, the night unfurls images of the world they once tended. The path winds gently upward, guarded by remnants of columns that lean like weary sentinels. Their surfaces are carved with faint crescents, star-marked symbols, and spirals that echo the long breath of ritual. These carvings are barely legible now, softened by wind and centuries of rain. But beneath the moon's glow, they seem to shimmer with renewed intention. Whispers tell us that some of these markings were not meant for the daylight at all, that their meanings awakened only when silver light touched them, revealing patterns meant to guide the Vestals through the deepest hours of night. As we walk, soft shadows gather around us like a veil, and fragments of their hidden world drift quietly into view. We see the shimmer of dawn reflected on old stone. We sense movements softened by discipline and quiet purpose. We feel the weight of vows spoken in chambers where even breath seemed sacred. The Vestals walked here in the earliest hours of the day, their white veils catching light like morning mist. Their rituals, carried out at thresholds between night and sunrise, moved like small ceremonies woven into the rhythm of the city's heart. Far ahead, the path glimmers faintly, brightened by the memory of the flame they guarded, the hearth fire believed to embody the life of the empire itself. It is difficult to imagine that a single fire, tended in silence by women few ever saw, could have held such sway over a world filled with marching legions and thunderous victories. Yet the contradiction lingers, soft and haunting. How did such a hidden life shape the trembling power of an empire? The moon drifts behind a thin veil of clouds, and for a moment the world dims. But the path remains visible, glowing faintly with the memory of steps taken long ago. We reach a narrow bend where the stones are darker, as though touched by ash. Some believe this was where the Vestals first gathered on certain nights to read the signs of wind and ember, interpreting the movement of flame as messages from the unseen. Here, scrolls wrapped in cloth might have been unrolled, not as chronicles, but as guides, maps of ritual, lists of sacred names, or fragments of old prayers that drifted down through generations. These scrolls, preserved like sleeping birds within chambers lined with soft shadows, were said to hold more than instruction. Whispers tell us they contained warnings as well. Omens recorded with steady hands, their meanings guarded with care. Scholars who studied fragments of early manuscripts once wondered whether the Vestals held knowledge that even the emperors feared, insights into the fragile thread between fate and flame. As we continue along the path, the air cools. The stones beneath our feet feel different now, smoother, more deliberate. We are approaching the sanctuary itself, though only its shadow remains. The moment stretches outward like a breath held in anticipation. The Vestals complex once stood here, a quiet world within the louder world of Rome. The moonlight reveals its crumbled edges, a curved wall half swallowed by ivy, broken pillars carved with lines that echo ancient hymns, foundations that once supported chambers arranged in a harmonious spiral. The air carries a sense of dust and faint incense, though no flame has burned here for many centuries. It is said that sacred places sometimes hold on to their old breath, letting it drift into the night when travelers move with respect. The courtyard opens before us, wide and dark, its center marked by a shallow basin, filled now with shadows instead of water. In its reflection, we see only the moon looking back, framed by ruined stone. Wind moves through the empty spaces where columns once rose in rows like tall guardians, and the sound resembles a sigh, long, low, and almost melodic. Here, the Vestals once walked in a ritual circle before dawn. Their steps were soft, deliberate, and always in unison. This courtyard was a place where vows were renewed and silence was cultivated like a rare flower. It is said that they believed silence had its own language, capable of carrying prayer farther than spoken words. And indeed, the air here feels thick with meaning, as though fragments of their devotion still float like dust motes in the moonlight. We move toward what remains of the hearth chamber, the place where the eternal fire burned. The entrance is framed by two fractured pillars, leaning inward as if bowing toward one another. Beneath the silence, the threshold feels charged, holding an ancient tension, not of danger, but of reverence. Inside, only broken stone remains, but the space retains a warmth that cannot be explained by the cool night air. Perhaps it is only imagination, stirred by the weight of history. Perhaps it is something more, an echo of the flame that refused to die. Here, too, the myths of the secret archives surface. Whispers tell us of sealed passages hidden behind the hearth chamber, accessible only to those who knew the silent rituals. These passages, some believe, held scrolls wrapped in red cloth, their edges marked with symbols meant to guard against unprepared eyes. Others say these archives contained forbidden omens, prophecies too delicate or too unsettling to share beyond the circle of veiled guardians. Some voices claim that within these depths rested objects carried from earlier ages, relics marked by the moon, carved with spirals or etched with celestial shapes whose meanings have long dissolved into dust. The moon shifts again, and a faint beam slides through a broken opening in the wall. It seems to pulse with subtle invitation, as though the archive still lies somewhere beyond, waiting in the soft cradle of earth. But as we draw nearer, the archway reveals nothing, only darkness, thick and impenetrable, veiled by time. We stand there for a while, listening. The stillness feels alive, aware, almost expectant. The air seems to carry a low hum, the kind that emerges not from stone, but from memory. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Then, slowly, gently, the hum fades. The silence deepens, and the old sanctuary settles once more into its patient slumber. We continue on, following a corridor that bends toward the far edge of the ruins. The ground slopes upward until a small platform emerges, a place where novices might have stood to receive their first blessing, or where a single vestal might have paused at dusk to breathe in the last warmth of day. From here, the city once unfurled in soft haze. Now, only shadowed rooftops and distant walls remain visible. The night air carries a chill, but also a strange comfort, as if the ruins themselves extend a gentle welcome to those who walk with quiet intention. The pale path draws us forward one last time. Ahead lies a darkened doorway, framed by stone that has grown soft around the edges, worn by centuries of weather and waiting. This is believed to be the final threshold, the entrance to the inner sanctum, where the flame once burned brightest. But the doorway opens onto nothing now, only darkness, deep and serene. We linger before it, sensing a warmth that seems impossible. The eternal flame is long gone, extinguished by time's steady hand. Yet the stillness around this doorway suggests that some vows never truly fade. Some rituals, once breathed into the world, continue to burn in ways that cannot be measured by sight or touch. Perhaps the flame was never fully extinguished. Perhaps it stepped quietly into the realm of memory, where it still glows for those who walk the vestal path under the moon. And as the night deepens, the ruins breathe softly around us, ancient, sacred, and tender in their silence, before settling back into their quiet dream, waiting for the next listener to drift along the pale path and feel the warmth of vows that time could not erase. It is said that some rivers do not merely flow, they remember. Their waters move forward, but their depths turn inward, carrying with them the quiet weight of ages. And so this story begins with the Tiber at night, appearing as a ribbon of dark silver unfurled beneath the moon. Its surface lies calm, smooth as brushed metal, yet heavy with stories whispered through centuries. Along its quiet edge, a small curl of mist rises from the riverbank. It lifts gently into the air like a fragile scroll unrolling itself, as if carrying a message from ages submerged, a letter the river has never spoken aloud, but never forgotten either. The night settles softly upon the city around us, and the river becomes the first voice we hear, not through sound, but through presence. It moves slowly, almost reverently, as though guiding us into an ancient ceremony hidden beneath the silence. The air is cool, touched by the faint scent of water and worn stone. Shadows hang low along the banks, and the moon's reflection shimmers in long, trembling lines that stretch across the river's skin. In forgotten corners of the world, rivers have served as thresholds between the realms of the living and the realms of memory. Tonight, the Tiber feels like such a threshold, a place where the past rises gently, like mist, to greet those who walk with patient steps. We glide along its edge, moving as one might through a dream. The soft earth beside the water gives slightly beneath our weight, and tiny stones shift like quiet murmurs. The river mirrors nothing perfectly. Instead, its surface distorts, reshapes, and softens everything it touches. Even the moon, which seems so certain above, appears blurred and shifting upon the water. It is as if the river insists that all things, even celestial ones, must surrender to its quiet remembering. Here at the edge, whispers tell us that countless offerings were once cast into the Tiber's depths: coins, charms, small carvings of wood or bone. Some were given with hope, others with fear. Some were prayers shaped into tangible form, surrendered to the current with trembling hands. And some were simply objects forgotten by accident or washed away by the sudden force of rain-swollen water. Yet the river, patient and unhurried, accepted them all, folding each one into its flowing archive. We pause where the stones of an ancient embankment rise like softened ribs along the shoreline. Moss clings to their surfaces in thin green threads, and the cracks between them hold centuries of dust. It is said that in earlier times, citizens approached this place before dawn, when the world lay cloaked in soft uncertainty. They whispered their worries into the water, trusting the river to carry them away. Some believe the Tiber responded in its own language, not through words, but through ripples, currents, and the occasional swirl of silver foam. As we drift onward, the river reveals more of its hidden stories. The dark water glimmers with faint reflections, a slivered silhouette of a bridge arching overhead, the faint outline of a statue worn by weather, the memory of towers that once stood tall, but now whisper only through distant ruins. It is said that statues once lifted beneath these currents, carried from fallen temples, their marble forms tumbling silently through the river's slow embrace. Some claim these statues were carried deliberately, cast into the water as offerings or as warnings, their stone faces staring upward through shifting depths. Others believe they simply slipped from embankments and terraces claimed by storms and floods. Whatever the truth, the river remembers them. Even if their forms have long since dissolved or settled into the deep silt, their presence lingers, not as shapes, but as impressions, the way a dream lingers after waking. We reach a place where the river widens, opening like a calm, dark eye gazing upward. The water moves more slowly here, and the mist seems to rise thicker, swirling in soft spirals that glow faintly beneath the moon. It is easy to imagine that beneath this section of the river lie objects too old to describe. Fragments of ancient altars, pieces of forgotten scrolls, coins marked with the faces of emperors whose names no longer echo across the city. Perhaps even small relics of childhood, lost toys or carved charms, each one held in the soft, cold hands of the current. The river becomes an oracle in this moment, not one that speaks, but one that invites interpretation. When we listen closely, the soft lap of water against stone feels almost like a page turning. Each ripple carries a sense of quiet revelation, though nothing is said clearly. Some knowledge prefers to drift just beyond reach, inviting reflection rather than certainty. A faint breeze stirs the surface, sending gentle shivers across the water. The moonlight breaks into patterns, spirals, ribbons, shifting loops that resemble ancient symbols. Whispers tell us that in the earliest days of the city, priests believed the river could reflect omens. They watched for these patterns before dawn, reading the smooth and broken lines like celestial messages mirrored in liquid form. When the water moved calmly, it was considered a good sign. When turbulent, a warning. But always, the priests approached with humility, for they believed the river had its own desires, its own moods. We drift on, following the soft pull of the current. Along the bank, trees lean forward with long, dark branches that dip into the water like curious fingers. The leaves rustle softly, and the river catches their fallen shapes, carrying them away into the night. These trees, too, seem to remember, too. Their roots, buried deep in silt and stone, have witnessed countless seasons, countless silhouettes moving along the water's edge. Beneath the silence, they feel like guardians, quiet watchers who breathe with the river's slow rhythm. As we continue, a low arch rises ahead. It is one of the ancient bridges, its stones worn smooth, its reflection shimmering in the dark water below. Its underside glows with moonlight caught in a shallow arc, creating a tunnel of soft silver. When we pass under it, the sound of the world shifts. The air thickens, the echo deepens, and for a moment, time feels paused. Beneath this arch, where countless footsteps once crossed above, the river hums with layered memory. We feel it like a vibration along the skin, a soft resonance from centuries of life brushing against the stone. On the far side of the bridge, the river narrows again. Here the water seems darker, the current slightly quicker, as though remembering moments of haste, the rush of floodwaters, the tumble of debris, or perhaps the hurried whispers of those who once stood uncertain at the water's edge. Yet even this movement feels gentle tonight, soothed by moonlight and quiet. Somewhere ahead, a faint sound rises. Not a splash, not a ripple, but something softer, like breath drawn through a hollow reed. It is easy to imagine that it comes from the river itself, exhaling stories it has held too long. Where memory fades, echoes take form, slipping into the spaces between sound and silence. We follow the sound until it dissipates into the air. The river widens once more, creating a long, dark corridor bordered by reeds swaying in slow motion. Their tips catch the moonlight, glowing in thin, misty lines like filaments of silver grass. The reflection stretches and contracts with the current, creating shapes reminiscent of ancient calligraphy, a language written not in ink but in light upon water. It is here that myths speak of temples once mirrored in the river's surface. Perhaps a column fell long ago, its reflection shattering across the water. Perhaps a priest once peered into the dark current, seeking prophecy. Some stories claim that on nights when the moon was full, the river offered visions, glimpses of what was lost or what had not yet come to pass. These stories drift like soft echoes now, neither fully believed nor fully dismissed. We move along the right bank, where older stones emerge from the soil like worn vertebrae. These stones once lined sacred paths and marked the edges of ceremonial spaces. Now they rest in half-silence, crumbled and veiled in moss. Touching them feels like touching the rough skin of time. The river grows quieter still. The mist thickens, forming a gentle veil that obscures the far bank. The water here reflects only a diffuse glow, the moon's shape dissolving into soft, trembling lines. The current slows until it seems almost still, as if the river is pausing to gather its ancient thoughts. In this final stretch, the Tiber becomes a pool of memory. Everything feels deeper, softer, more suspended. The river holds its breath, and in that quiet, we sense the weight of centuries settling like dust upon the surface. The offerings cast, the hope surrendered, the forgotten objects that slipped beneath its depths, all of them remain, folded into the river's long dream. It is said that some trees do not grow from soil alone, but from breath, from the exhalations of prayers, from the murmurs of the unseen, from centuries of quiet expectation held tenderly beneath their branches. And so this chapter begins with a solitary laurel tree standing at the heart of an abandoned grove, its leaves trembling softly beneath the night sky. The moon settles above it like a silver guardian, spilling pale light upon its branches, as though remembering a vow once spoken here. The opening question drifts through the darkness with the softness of a forgotten lullaby. Whose breath once blessed this sacred grove? The air carries a faint sweetness, something old and delicate, reminiscent of crushed leaves or incense half faded from memory. A gentle breeze moves through the clearing, stirring the laurel's branches so lightly that the motion feels more like a thought than a wind. In forgotten corners of the world, groves such as this were once considered thresholds, places where the boundary between the living and the divine thinned like worn silk. And here, at the edge of moonlit ruins, the threshold still feels tender, still vibrates faintly with something sacred. We step toward the laurels slowly, as though entering a temple without walls. The ground is soft beneath our feet, layered with centuries of fallen leaves that crumble into fragrant dust. A few stones form a broken path, barely visible now, their edges softened by time. This path once led the faithful into the heart of the grove, guiding them to the tree whose roots curled around remnants of marble. Even in ruin, the marble glows faintly beneath the moonlight. It is worn smooth in places where hands may have rested, where offerings may have been placed before vanishing into the long river of years. In ancient Rome, the laurel carried a weight beyond ornament. It crowned poets who sought divine inspiration, prophets who listened to the secret breath of fate, and silent watchers of the sacred who guarded rites too delicate for daylight. The rustle of its leaves was believed to carry messages, warnings or blessings carried by winds that drifted between realms. To stand beneath such a tree was to place oneself within the realm of omens, the realm of whispers that spoke not through words but through trembling branches and shifting shadows. As we move deeper into the grove, we imagine the shrine that once existed here. It rises in our mind like a dream stitched from fragments, pillars of pale stone arranged in a gentle curve, a low altar carved with spirals that echo the movement of leaves in the wind, soft offerings of ribbons and carved stones resting at the tree's roots. The ribbons flutter in memory, their colors faded into dusk tones, clay red, dusk sky blue, muted gold. The carved stones carry symbols of gratitude, hope, or quiet supplication. Some are marked by the moon, some bear faint lines that resemble stars or the shape of a leaf poised mid-fall. Between the pillars, the night breeze drifts through like a wandering spirit. Each time it touches the laurel, the leaves rustle in a pattern that feels intentional, almost articulate. Whispers tell us that oracles once came to this grove to listen, not to speak. Unlike the grand temples crowded with incense and procession, this place embraced the sacredness of quiet. Here, the oracle was not a voice proclaiming visions, but a listener, one who pressed their ear to the pulse of the earth and heard what others could not. Their rituals were simple, soft breaths drawn beneath the branches, fingers brushing the edges of carved marble, silent contemplation in the shadows that pooled around the roots. Some say they carried scrolls wrapped in linen, not to read, but to hold, for the touch of sacred texts was believed to help align the mind with unseen harmonies. Moments passed slowly within this grove, measured not by the rise of sun, but by the rhythm of wind and leaf. The oracle listened to each rustle as though decoding the language of the divine. Their rituals were simple, soft breaths drawn beneath the branches, fingers brushing the edges of carved marble, silent contemplation in the shadows that pulled around the roots. Some say they carried scrolls wrapped in linen, not to read, but to hold,
for the touch of sacred texts was believed to help align the mind with unseen harmonies. Moments passed slowly within this grove, measured not by the rise of sun, by the rhythm of wind and leaf. The oracle listened to each rustle as though decoding the language of the divine. We stand beneath the laurel now, trying to imagine their world. The branches brush the remnants of marble beside us, creating a soft, rhythmic tapping, like the echo of an old ceremony. Above, the stars drift in their slow configurations, scattered across the sky like ancient ink. The moon hangs low, casting a muted glow that slips between the leaves, creating patterns of light that ripple across the ground. As the breeze moves through the tree, the shadows shift gently, as if reenacting an old ritual. The grove feels alive with memory. Though abandoned, it carries the residue of devotion, faint, almost imperceptible, yet persistent. The air seems to hold its breath, waiting for the next rustle, the next whisper from the leaves. We walk a slow circle around the tree, following the line where marble meets earth. The stones here are crumbled, cracked open by time, yet they still form the faint outline of a sacred boundary. It is said that this grove was once used only under moonlight, for daylight was considered too loud, too bright, too earthly to allow communion with the silent realms. At night, when the world softened into shadow, the grove opened its quiet mouth and spoke in rustling breath. Legends of this place drift like smoke through ancient texts and stories, incomplete, half erased, often contradicted. Some tell of a single oracle chosen each generation, guided by dreams marked by the moon. Others speak of wandering seekers who stumbled upon the grove by accident and found themselves drawn into its whispering world. Still others insist that the grove was never meant for human feet at all, that it belonged to the spirits of wind and leaf, and that the presence of watchers was merely tolerated, not welcome. As we wander, the darkness deepens, but it does not feel threatening. Instead, it wraps around us like a soft cloak. The leaves above us shimmer with each passing breeze, their edges touched by moonlight. A faint sigh drifts through the grove, perhaps only wind slipping between the branches, but it feels like something more, like the soft exhale of an ancient companion. Beneath the silence, we sense a story that has never been fully told. The grove was forgotten long ago, left to fade into memory as cities grew and rituals changed. Shrines crumbled, paths dissolved into soil, scrolls decayed until nothing remained but faint dust mingled with fallen leaves. People stopped coming, and the grove withdrew into itself, becoming a sanctuary only for the quiet and the moon. Yet something remains, something small but persistent, like a single ember refusing to extinguish. It lingers in the air, in the trembling leaves, in the way the branches lean toward the moon as if reaching for an old promise. It is the echo of those who once sought guidance here, those who stood beneath the laurel and listened, not for answers, but for presence. We stand still beneath the branches, letting the quiet settle into our bones. Time stretches outward, smoothing itself into a soft ribbon of silence. The breeze slows, the shadows deepen, the laurel's leaves shimmer faintly, as though touched by some invisible hand. In this moment, the grove feels suspended, unmoored from past and present, resting in a space where memory fades into dream. The stories that once lived here rise like distant echoes, shimmering at the edge of comprehension. A warning, a blessing, a prayer breathed into the wind centuries ago. The leaves rustle once more, a sound so soft it feels like a whisper brushing the edge of thought. Perhaps it is only the night wind. Perhaps it is something older. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. We take a slow step backward, then another, letting the darkness reclaim the space between us and the tree. The laurel stands tall, its silhouette framed against the pale glow of the moon. The marble at its roots gleams faintly, like bones of a forgotten structure. And the air, thick with ancient quiet, holds the last breath of the moment. In the closing scene, the leaves quiver one last time. A soft shiver, a gentle tremble, as though remembering the voices that once sought guidance beneath their shade, as though acknowledging our presence, brief, quiet, respectful. Then the grove returns to stillness, settling into its deep, patient dream, holding its stories close, waiting for the next quiet soul to wander beneath the silent laurel and feel the echo of forgotten breath brushing against the night.
It is said that some doorways do not open into rooms or corridors, but into moments, thin, trembling moments where the world seems to breathe differently, where the air grows still enough for omens to gather. And so this chapter begins with such a doorway, half buried in soil at the edge of an abandoned courtyard. Only its arch remains visible, a soft curve rising from earth like the final breath of a forgotten structure. Carved into its surface are faint star symbols, worn nearly to dust, as though they once glowed with celestial intention but have since surrendered to centuries of quiet. Moonlight rests upon the arch with delicate care, illuminating the faint spirals etched into its stone. These spirals resemble drifting constellations, drawn not with precision, but with reverent imagination. They guide the eye downward toward the threshold, buried beneath layers of soil, as if urging us to uncover the path once taken by a watcher of the skies. Tonight, the world feels hushed, and the doorway calls softly, a whisper beneath the silence. We stand before it, imagining the one who once passed through, the augur who vanished during a night when omens gathered like storm clouds. His name has long since dissolved from memory, slipping through the cracks of old records like water through cupped hands. Yet his presence lingers in the air around this buried arch, as though the earth remembers his footsteps even if the world above does not. Whispers tell us he walked through courtyards like this, listening to the tremor of wings overhead, interpreting the movements of birds as messages from unseen realms. For in ancient Rome, the augur's duty was not merely observation, it was communion. Through him, the sky spoke. Through him, the empire sought guidance. Through him, the boundary between the earth and the divine grew thin, like parchment held against a flame. And so, as we step carefully over the edge of the soil and descend into the half-buried doorway, we follow not only the memory of a man, but the path of a ritual. The air shifts immediately, cooler, thicker, touched by the dust of forgotten chambers. Beneath the city, the stone holds its own pulse. Our footsteps echo gently, blending with the distant drip of unseen water. The corridor curves like the inside of a shell, spiraling downward into the heart of shadow. Each wall is etched with symbols that shimmer faintly beneath the moonbeams filtering through cracks above. These symbols resemble constellations, though none match the sky we know. Perhaps they once mapped omens now lost to time. As we move deeper, the faint scent of ancient incense rises in the air, resin and crushed leaves, long absorbed into the stone. It feels as though we are not entering a ruin, but stepping through the lingering breath of an old ceremony. The augur, too, would have walked this way. Some believe he performed his rituals in sanctuaries where moonlight was the only fire, where shadows danced like living threads upon the floor. The corridor widens into a small courtyard hidden beneath fallen beams. Moonlight trickles through a fractured ceiling, painting soft shapes across the ground. In this pale glow, we sense the ghost of a long-ago gathering, figures standing still, heads lifted toward the sky, waiting for the signal of wings. The augur would have raised his staff, eyes tracing the flight of birds as they circled above. To him, each flutter was a message, each tilt of wing held meaning. The destiny of nations rested upon these delicate movements, carried in silence across the air. We pause in the center of the courtyard, imagining the tremor of that night, a night marked by the moon, heavy with signs. It is said that the augur saw a flight pattern unlike anything he had witnessed before. Wings crossed in impossible formation, like an arrow pointing toward the earth instead of the sky. Some believed this omen foretold the fall of something sacred. Others insisted it heralded the birth of something hidden. But the augur, silent but trembling, understood its weight. And instead of recording the omen, he vanished.
Some say he sought refuge beneath the city, retreating into the hidden places where rituals were whispered rather than proclaimed. Others believe he discovered a sign too vast to be spoken, a truth that could not survive the open air. And so he stepped through a gate that only those touched by shadow could find. As we leave the courtyard and continue deeper into the ruins, the corridor narrows again. The walls feel older here, carved with lines that resemble the ribs of a great celestial creature. Dust glitters faintly in the air, responding to each breath we take. The path slopes downward until the stone beneath our feet seems to hum with a quiet, rhythmic vibration, the heartbeat of the earth itself. We reach a chamber small enough to feel intimate, yet vast enough to contain secrets. Its walls are lined with recessed alcoves, each holding a fragment of carved stone or a remnant of ancient offerings. A small bowl rests in one alcove, its surface etched with spirals. Another holds a small statue, its figure worn beyond recognition. Perhaps these were objects once used in augural rites, tools for interpreting the messages carried by wings and wind. The air grows cooler, and somewhere in the distance the soft flutter of wings echo, faint, elusive, as though rising from memory rather than movement. It is easy to imagine the augur here, waiting in the dim glow of a single lamp, tracing patterns upon the ground, listening for something only he could hear. The path ahead is framed by another arch, this one fully intact and carved with star symbols that glow softly when touched by moonlight. It feels less like a doorway and more like a threshold, a point of transition between what is known and what whispers in shadow. When we step through, the air changes again. The chamber beyond is larger, its ceiling rising into darkness. The walls form a gentle curve, creating the sense of being inside of a giant hollowed stone. At the far end stands a gate, tall, narrow, and carved from a single slab of pale material that seems almost luminous. Dust clings to its surface, but beneath the dust, faint spirals shimmer like echoes of constellations. This is the gate the augur is said to have entered. Legends claim that after witnessing the impossible omen, he retreated into this hidnar, placing his hand upon the gate as though it were a living thing. Some believe the gate responded, opening not with sound, but with a shift in the air, revealing a darkness deeper than any corridor beneath the city. Others say he stepped through without hesitation, guided by a force he could not refuse. The gate, according to these stories, closed behind him with the softness of wings folding shut. We move closer. The gate is cold beneath our fingertips, holding the chill of centuries. The spirals carved into its surface seem to pulse faintly, catching the moonlight that filters through cracks above. It feels as though the stone is waiting, not for us, but for the presence that once crossed its threshold. The chamber holds its breath. Silence gathers in thick layers. Dust drifts in slow, mesmerizing swirls. The faint echo of wings stirs again, lingering just at the edge of perception. It is impossible to tell whether the sound comes from above, from within the gate, or from memory itself. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. We step back, letting the darkness reclaim the space between us and the gate. The chamber seems to dim, as though shielding its secret. The air grows heavier, yet gentler, like the final exhale of a long-forgotten ritual. As we walk away, the passage behind us stretches like a quiet tunnel of breath. Shadows move softly across the walls, creating shapes reminiscent of wings lifting into the night. When we reach the buried arch, the doorway where this journey began, the moon hangs lower in the sky, casting a pale glow across the soil. The doorway seems to close of its own accord, not physically, but through the shifting of darkness. The earth folds around it, the night wraps its edges, and only the faintest arc remains visible. A final impression lingers in the air, the soft brush of wings in the dark, fading into silence. Perhaps the augur stepped into a truth too delicate for daylight. Perhaps the gate opens only for those who can read the sky's hidden messages. Perhaps some thresholds remain closed until the world grows quiet enough to hear what lies beneath the silence. And as the night drifts deeper, the buried doorway settles into shadow, guarding its secret beneath the weight of centuries, waiting for the next gentle soul to wonder what lies beyond the gate of the lost augur.
It is said that some halls are built not to glorify memory, but to cradle its fading. And so this chapter opens with an empty hall, a long chamber carved from pale stone, its walls lined with broken niches where statues once stood like silent sentinels. Now those niches gape like hollow eyes, their occupants vanished or returned to dust. Moonlight drifts through a fractured opening in the ceiling, settling upon the cracked marble floor in softened pools of silver. Soft dust floats through the still air, carrying the unspoken presence of rulers whose names slipped quietly from the world's tongue. Here, beneath the silence, history breathes not in triumph, but in a kind of contemplative stillness. We step into the hall with slow, measured breaths. The silence is not empty, it is full of echoes, full of unvoiced regrets, full of the weight of power that once shaped empires and now leaves only faint impressions upon the stone. The dust beneath our feet stirs in small spirals, drifting upward like tiny ghosts rising to greet the moon. Each grain feels ancient, as though it remembers the footsteps of those who once walked here, wrapped in robes heavy with meaning. The hall stretches forward in a long corridor of shadow. On either side, the broken niches cradle fragments, a hand made of marble, severed from its body long ago. The curve of a cloak carved in exquisite detail, still clinging to the edge of a pedestal. A face broken clean down the middle, its remaining half serene and unreadable. These fragments feel less like remnants of statues and more like pieces of memory itself, incomplete, fragile, on the edge of dissolving entirely. In forgotten corners of the earth, there are places where the past retreats into stillness, offering itself only to those who enter quietly. This chamber feels like such a place. As we move deeper, the air thickens with a sense of reverence. It is not the reverence of worship or authority, but something gentler, the reverence reserved for things that once mattered deeply and now linger only as faint echoes. Whispers tell us that this hall once held the statues of emperors who chose anonymity after death. Strange though it may seem, in a world where rulers carved their names into stone and sought immortality through monuments, some emperors, it is said, wished for none of that. Perhaps they grew weary of the weight of their own image. Perhaps they desired to dissolve into the city they ruled, rather than loom above it. Or perhaps they feared the shape memory would give them, preferring silence over the distortions that come with time. The myths that circulate about them are soft and fragmented, like dust carried on a faint breeze. Some speak of an emperor who, in his later years, wandered the city at night in simple clothes, seeking to feel the world as his subjects felt it. Others tell of a ruler who spent his final months in contemplation, releasing the trappings of power one by one until nothing remained but breath and bone. Still others speak of a man who wished to be remembered only through the quiet harmony of the laws he shaped, not through statues or triumphs. These stories blur together, merging into a single myth, the myth of rulers who chose absence. We come to the center of the hall, where a wide stone platform rises like an island amid the sea of dust. Its edges are softened by centuries, but its purpose is unmistakable. This was once the place of honor, the heart of the chamber. Moonlight spills across it, illuminating faint carvings that spiral outward from the center like star patterns drawn by a gentle hand. The spirals feel celestial, as though mapping constellations that once guided the empire's fate. We pause before the platform, imagining the figure that once stood upon it.
Not grand or towering, not adorned in symbols of conquest. But still, the air around the platform seems to hum with quiet significance. Some believe the statue that once stood here depicted an emperor with his head bowed slightly, a posture not of power, but of reflection. Others insist the platform was always empty, meant to symbolize the impermanence of authority. The truth, like so much in this hall, remains veiled. As we explore further, small details emerge from the shadows. A piece of mosaic tile bearing the faded image of a laurel branch, a fragment of painted plaster depicting a hand holding a scroll, a piece of bronze shaped like a feather, tarnished and fragile. Each artifact carries a feeling of gentle surrender, as though the hall itself allowed its splendor to crumble softly, choosing humility over grandeur. The air grows cooler as we move deeper. The marble beneath our feet feels colder, smoother, more buried in the quiet of time. The walls narrow subtly, guiding us toward an alcove at the far end of the hall. Here, the darkness deepens, swallowing the moonlight and holding its own secrets. Within this alcove stands a single pedestal, empty, unmarked, untouched by the fragments of history scattered elsewhere. This pedestal feels different. It is not broken, it is not crumbling. It stands as it once did, proud yet humble, simple yet evocative. Its emptiness speaks louder than any statue ever could. It is a sanctuary of absence, a place for forgotten crowns and unvoiced regrets, a monument to what was relinquished rather than claimed. Some believe this pedestal held no statue because none was ever meant to be carved. It was a place for reflection, a place where rulers faced themselves without the gaze of the world upon them. Others say it held an object, perhaps a scroll, perhaps a small crown of woven leaves, perhaps a stone marked with a celestial symbol, an object left behind by the lost emperors who sought anonymity. We stand before it now, letting the silence settle into our bones. The alcove feels like the heartbeat of the hall, slow and deep. Dust drifts lazily through the air, catching the faint glow of distant moonlight. The quiet is profound, so complete it feels like a presence unto itself. Beneath the silence, something stirs, not a sound, but a sensation. A sense of being watched, not by eyes, but by memory. The hall holds its breath, as though remembering something long forgotten. A soft tremor of air brushes past us, stirring the dust into a gentle spiral. For a moment, the alcove feels alive, animated by a presence just beyond comprehension. Perhaps the emperors who sought anonymity did not vanish entirely. Perhaps the choice to dissolve into silence left an imprint so subtle it reveals itself only in moments like this. Or perhaps the hall, in its long solitude, has grown its own form of spirit, one made not of marble or bronze, but of the quiet weight of what once was. We step back from the alcove, and the spell begins to loosen. The quiet deepens again, settling into its long, patient rhythm. The pedestal fades into shadow, becoming once more a simple shape in the darkness. The air softens, losing the strange tension that lingered near the pedestal. And then, gently, the hall fades into shadow. We take one last look back. The moonlight no longer reaches the center of the chamber. The darkness has reclaimed its throne, wrapping the hall in a soft, velvety silence. The impression of wings, or perhaps only dust stirred by our passage, drifts upward, catching the faintest hint of light before dissolving entirely. Perhaps the emperors who sought anonymity chose wisely. Perhaps their memory was never meant to be carved in stone. Perhaps some legacies are strongest when they are allowed to fade. And as the night deepens, the chamber of forgotten emperors settles once more into its quiet dream, holding its secrets gently beneath the silence, waiting for the next wandering soul to pause, listen, and feel the fragile nature of remembrance breathing softly in the dark.
It is said that some buildings do not sleep when the world grows quiet. They murmur. Their stones remember footsteps. Their arches cradle echoes too soft for daylight, and their shadows hold the breath of those who once moved beneath them with trembling hope. And so this chapter opens with such a murmur, a soft hum rising from the ancient theater of Marcellus, as though the old structure still sings beneath its arches. Evening light drapes itself across the worn facade, brushing pale gold along its curves, illuminating cracks where ivy curls like delicate handwriting. The dying sun glimmers across its weathered stones, hinting at entrances long sealed, whispers long buried, stories waiting at the edge of sound. We step into the presence of the theater with a sense of reverence, for this is not merely a ruin of performance, it is a vessel of memory. Its arches seem to breathe with each shift of twilight. Its corridors hold pockets of cool air, smelling faintly of dust and old incense. The upper tiers rise like a broken crown, open to the sky, while the lower galleries drift into shadow, as though reluctant to reveal what lies within. Beneath the silence, something stirs. Not a voice, but a sensation, a gentle vibration carried by the stones. Whispers tell us that beneath the stage, beneath centuries of settling earth and drifting dust, lies a sanctuary, a hidden space where actors once sought blessings before stepping into the glow of torches. They came here not for glory, but for steadiness, a moment to quiet trembling hearts, to ask for strength, to breathe deeply before becoming someone else beneath the moonlit sky. As we cross the threshold, the hum deepens, guiding us toward a narrow passage where stone steps descend in a curve like a slow exhale. The theater above remains visible through cracks in the ceiling, where shafts of pale light slip through, falling upon the dust like silver threads. The walls grow cooler as we move downward, brushing against carved stone worn smooth by countless fingertips. It is easy to imagine the performers who once paused here, adjusting costumes, whispering lines to themselves, touching charms hidden in their sleeves. The air thickens with the scent of earth and age, a mixture both grounding and otherworldly. A faint smell of extinguished torches lingers, though no flame has burned here for centuries. In the dimness, the passage walls are adorned with faded markings, tiny inscriptions scratched by restless hands, small stars etched by someone perhaps hoping for good fortune, spirals drawn to calm anxious breath. Some symbols look like doodles, others like prayers. All of them feel deeply human. We reach a small landing where the corridor splits. The left path sinks into deeper shadow. The right curves beneath an arch carved with faint laurel leaves. This was likely the way to the sanctuary, the place where performers sought communion with whatever unseen forces governed stage and destiny. The hum grows stronger here, though not louder. It vibrates softly through the stone like a sigh held in memory. We choose the right path. It leads us into a chamber half collapsed, its ceiling braced by ancient beams softened by time. The remnants of frescoes cling to the walls, patches of color barely visible, but enough to suggest scenes of masks, torchlit processions, and hands raised in blessing. One fragment shows a face with wide eyes, its expression somewhere between fear and wonder. Another depicts a torch held aloft, the flames spiraling upward in a dance of ochre and faded gold. These images feel like remnants of dreams, barely present yet undeniably meaningful. Beneath these frescoes lie talismans. A few remain where they were placed, small objects tucked into niches carved in the walls. A bead shaped from bone, a small polished stone etched with a crescent, a ribbon of deep red fabric, its edges frayed but still holding its color. These talismans tell of the actors who once came here, figures whose names never entered history, yet whose emotions linger like soft footprints in the dust. One can imagine them standing here, breathing deeply, fingertips grazing a charm for reassurance as they listen to the muffled murmur of the audience above.
In forgotten corners of ancient theaters, it is said that the line between the performer and the divine was thin. To step upon the stage was to cross a threshold. To become someone else, even briefly, required courage, vulnerability, and a silent request for guidance. Some actors believed their craft was a conversation with unseen powers, an offering of story and emotion given freely to the night. And so they came here to sanctuaries like this one, seeking quiet communion before striding into the glow. The air in the chamber feels thick with this history, not heavy, but full, as though every breath contains a fragment of the countless breaths taken here long before us. We stand in the center of the room, letting the darkness settle gently around us. The hum rises again, aligning itself with our heartbeat. It feels as though the sanctuary is welcoming us, or remembering us from a time we cannot name. The theater above responds in faint echoes, a soft shift of stone, a creak from an ancient arch, a whisper of wind traveling through its upper tiers. These sounds drift down like memories descending a staircase, each one losing form as it approaches the earth. When they reach the sanctuary, they dissolve entirely, leaving only the soft hum. We leave the chamber and continue deeper into the labyrinth of corridors. Each step reveals new textures, stones crumbled into soft sand underfoot, patches of old plaster peeling like curled petals, fragments of pottery embedded in the walls. The echoes of our footsteps mingle with the hum, creating the impression that we are not alone, not watched, but accompanied by the presence of those who once moved through these spaces with trembling anticipation. A narrow archway ahead leads to a lower corridor where the air grows noticeably cooler. The walls here are damp, glistening faintly like the skin of river stones. The ceiling arches low, forcing us to bow slightly, a gesture that feels almost ceremonial. Along this corridor, more inscriptions linger, small phrases scratched into stone, perhaps lines from plays or whispered wishes. Some are illegible, others form simple shapes: a star, a flame, a pair of wings. As we walk, the corridor widens suddenly into a long, low chamber beneath what have been the stage. This chamber is supported by columns arranged in a row, like a procession frozen in stone. Evening light filters faintly through the cracks above, casting thin beams that fall like soft pillars of gold across the floor. Dust swirls in these beams, rising like incense. This is the heart of the sanctuary, the space beneath the performance where actors once gathered before stepping into the world above. The theater becomes a ghostly presence here. Through the cracks overhead, we can almost imagine the glow of torches, the murmur of crowds settling into their seats, the flutter of robes as performers took their positions. The air feels like a held breath, suspended between anticipation and memory. We walk slowly among the columns, listening to the faint hum that seems to pulse with the rhythm of the theater's long-forgotten heart. In the soft patches of evening light, we see delicate fresco fragments painted onto the stone, masks with serene expressions, their smiles gentle and enigmatic, swirling patterns resembling smoke or breath, figures dancing in postures so fluid they almost seem to sway in the shifting light. Whispers tell us that masks were not merely props, they were vessels of transformation. To place a mask upon one's face was to offer oneself to the role, to step across the threshold between the everyday and the sacred. The sanctuary beneath the stage was where this transformation began, where the performer breathed deeply, letting the world fall away, preparing to become someone else under torchlight. The silence deepens, yet the hum continues, as though the theater still resonates with the energy of countless performances. The echo of applause, unseen, unheard, but somehow present, shimmers faintly in the air. It is like a memory that refuses to fade completely, a ghost of sound that lingers between the stones. We reach the far end of the chamber where a small alcove is carved into the wall. Inside it rests a fragment of marble shaped like half a mask, the eyes hollow, the mouth curved in a soft, mysterious smile. Time has worn the edges smooth. The mask seems to glow faintly as though reflecting the light of performances long gone. It feels like a guardian of the sanctuary, an emblem of the countless faces once worn, the countless stories once told. We stand before it, letting the silence gather. Perhaps the actors who touched this place sought guidance. Perhaps they left traces of themselves in the air. Perhaps some voices linger only for those who walk slow enough to hear them. The hum grows softer now, its vibrations settling like dust. The theater above shifts slightly, releasing a gentle sigh of stone. A faint breath of wind enters the lower corridors through some unseen crack, carrying with it the distant scent of night air and the echo of the world above. The wind glides across the chamber, brushing gently.
It is said that some places are not lost. They simply drift into the quiet spaces of memory, where they continue to breathe in ways the world no longer notices. And so this chapter opens with a memory, the faint, shimmering recollection of an orchard that once grew at the city's edge, glowing softly beneath the evening sky. It appears to us as though through a veil, a landscape half remembered, half dreamed. The horizon is brushed with dusk, a soft wash of rose and deepening blue. The trees stand in gentle rows, their silhouettes dark against the fading light, each one carrying the hush of twilight within its branches. The air feels cool as we step into this imagined grove, carrying with it the scent of apple, fig, and something subtler, the sweetness of night as it settles upon the earth. Beneath the silence, a soft breath of wind stirs the leaves, creating a whisper that seems to ripple through time. It is said that this orchard was once a sanctuary, a place where rituals of thanksgiving and quiet farewell were woven into the rhythm of the seasons. Families came here not in celebration, but in gentle reflection, offering fruit to the earth as a gesture of gratitude for the year behind them. Some whisper that the orchard glowed faintly at dusk, as though the trees themselves held a secret fire. Others believe it was simply the way the setting sun brushed against the fruit, catching the curved surfaces with warm gold. But whatever the truth, the orchard grew into legend, a place where the city exhaled its burdens into the twilight. The first tree we approach leans slightly to one side, its trunk curved like the back of an old storyteller. Its bark is marked with faint spirals, carved by someone long ago, perhaps a child who waited beneath the branches for a parent to finish a prayer, perhaps a wanderer who rested here at the edge of night. The spirals curl inward like ancient symbols, drawing the eye into their depth. They feel familiar, as though echoing the quiet cycles of the moon. As we wander deeper into the orchard, the light grows softer, the shadows longer, stretching like gentle arms across the ground. The grass beneath our feet is cool and slightly damp, carrying the faintest trace of dew. From somewhere beyond the trees, the soft call of a night bird drifts through the air. It feels like a small blessing, a reminder that even in forgotten places, life continues to hum. The fruit hanging from the branches glows subtly in the dimming light, apples tinted with clay red, figs with dusky green and bronze tones. When the breeze passes through, the leaves flutter softly, releasing a scent so soothing it feels like an old song humming just beneath hearing. Some believe that the offerings left in this orchard imbued the trees with a lingering spirit of peace. Others say the peace came first, and the offerings merely honored it. We come upon a clearing near the center of the grove. Here, the ground dips gently, creating a small hollow surrounded by older trees whose branches arch toward each other like a natural shelter. This was the heart of the orchard, the place where families, travelers, and solitary wanderers would come at dusk to leave their final offerings. Whispers tell us that the rituals were simple: a piece of fruit placed into the hollow, a token shaped from wood or stone laid gently at the base of a tree, a quiet breath released into the cooling air. Nothing grand, nothing heavy with ceremony,
The orchard did not ask for grandeur. It asked only for sincerity, a moment to acknowledge the passing of time, to let go of whatever burdens one carried, to release gratitude into the dusk like a soft exhale. The offerings were said to shimmer faintly in the moonlight as the night deepened. Some claimed the trees absorbed them, drawing their meaning into the roots and branches. Over time, small tokens accumulated beneath the soil: beads, ribbons, carved stones, perhaps even scrolls with names written in fading ink. Each one a quiet prayer folded into the earth. We imagine these offerings now as we stand in the clearing. The ground beneath us feels alive with memory, warm despite the cool evening air. When the wind moves through the branches, the sound resembles soft voices, whispers rising and falling with the breeze. Not words exactly, but something close, something like the emotional echo left behind by centuries of breath and hope. But time moves like water, reshaping the land steadily, inevitably. As the city expanded, the orchard's boundaries blurred. One by one, the trees were cleared to make way for stone. Pathways were paved, walls were raised. The quiet grove at the edge of dusk was slowly absorbed into the growing hum of daily life. And one evening, without fanfare, the orchard took its final breath beneath the moon. Where trees once stood, shadows rose. Where offerings were once tucked beneath branches, dust settled. Where families gathered at dusk, silence spread like a final blessing. Yet even as the orchard vanished, its presence lingered, not in sight, but in the quiet space just beneath awareness. The city continued to build upward and outward, but beneath its foundations, beneath layers of stone and centuries, something of the orchard remained. A dream lodged within the earth, a memory resting beneath the noise of life. In forgotten corners of the city, late wanderers sometimes claimed to catch a scent of figs or apples drifting through the night air. Others spoke of pauses in the noise, small silences that felt like stepping into an older world. A few swore they dreamed of a grove glowing softly at dusk, though they had no memory of ever visiting such a place. Perhaps the orchard whispered to them, or perhaps it remembered them. We move through the imagined grove now, letting the past blend with the present. The trees seem to shimmer between what was and what is. Each trunk appears both solid and ghost-like, as though unsure whether it still belongs to the world. The ground beneath us feels soft, then firm, then soft again, like shifting memory. Time here is not a straight path, but a gentle spiral drawing us deeper into reflection. As we approach the far edge of the orchard, the light fades into a deep twilight blue. The trees thin out, and a small slope rises before us. At the top of the slope, the faint outline of the city appears, rooftops layered against the night, windows glinting with scattered light. The sound of distant voices drifts through the air, soft and warm. The orchard feels both close and impossibly far away. We pause, looking back over the grove. The trees stand silent, their leaves barely stirring in the stillness. For a moment, the world holds its breath. The dusk deepens. The edges of the grove blur, becoming part of the larger darkness. And then, something small catches our eye. A single petal, pale as moonlight, rests upon the ground near our feet. Its edges curl slightly, as though shaped by an unseen hand. It lies alone, untouched by breeze or time, glowing faintly in the twilight. We kneel, feeling the cool earth beneath our hand. The petal is soft, almost weightless, a gentle reminder of all that once grew here. Not a grand relic, not a carved stone or a sacred token, just a simple petal, fallen quietly, carrying within its delicate form a memory of the orchard's long breath. Perhaps it drifted from a tree long vanished. Perhaps the orchard leaves small gifts for those who walk slowly, who listen gently. Or perhaps it is simply the earth remembering. We hold the moment gently. Then the night deepens. The grove dissolves into shadow. The petal remains softly luminous on the dark ground. And the listener is left with the whisper of a sanctuary that once breathed gratitude into the dusk, a place that may have vanished, yet continues to live wherever quiet hearts seek peace beneath the fading light.
It is said that some stories do not begin with footsteps or with voices, but with silence, a silence so ancient and so finely woven that it carries the weight of forgotten breath. And so this chapter opens with a whisper of parchment drifting through unseen corridors, fragile as a moth's wing in the dusk. It floats through memory rather than air, brushing softly against the dim shapes of a hill once crowned with radiance. The Capitoline rises above the sleeping city like a guardian carved from time, and beneath its stone gones drifts the lingering presence of a place that no longer exists, or perhaps one that was never meant to exist in daylight. A whisper of parchment, a soft rustle like a turning page in a room long lost to dust. It is said that knowledge once glowed here like firelight, warm and alive, embraced by scholars and guarded by the night. Though the library itself has vanished, erased by centuries of rebuilding, repurposing, and slow decay, legends insist that a room remains, sealed within the heart of the hill. A room untouched by time, where scrolls of forgotten rituals rest in quiet spirals, each one a sleeping voice carrying wisdom too delicate for the world above. We drift toward this imagined sanctuary as evening deepens around us. The Capitoline steps rise in gentle stages, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of hands, wheels, and wandering pilgrims. The air grows cooler as we ascend, carrying with it the faint scent of stone warmed by the day. Shadows stretch across the piazza, merging with statues whose expressions linger in that strange threshold between presence and absence. Some believe the phantom library reveals itself only when the hill grows quiet enough to listen. Not when crowds gather, not when torches flare, but when dusk settles gently and the first stars tremble above the skyline. In such moments, certain corners of the Capitoline seem to shift, recalling shapes they once held: a curve of wall, a shadow too straight to be accidental, a corridor that seems to breathe. Tonight, beneath the soft haze of twilight, the air feels expectant. We follow the whisper of parchment toward a narrow passage between two structures. It is not a doorway, not a hall, but a space where time seems to pause. The stones are warm at first, then cool as our fingers brush against them. One stone bears a faint marking, a spiral, shallow and nearly erased. Another holds a star-shaped chip, as if struck by something celestial. Perhaps mere coincidence, perhaps remnants of a map known only to those who once tended the scrolls. We slip into the passage. The noise of the city fades as though swallowed by the stone. Only the sound of our breath remains, joining the soft hum of the hill itself. The passage gently curves, descending into dimness that feels more imagined than tangible. The walls narrow, then widen, revealing alcoves carved into the rock. In our mind's eye, or perhaps in the memory of the hill, each alcove holds a warm glow, the soft light of oil lamps flickering like captive stars. The air grows warmer, thick with dust that carries the perfume of parchment long surrendered to time. The scent feels familiar, like ancient prayer books just before dawn, or like scrolls brushed open after centuries of sleep. In these alcoves, we imagine the scrolls, fragile, curled like resting animals, wrapped in linen faded to soft gold. Some said the scrolls contained rituals too gentle for public ritual, invocations whispered at night to calm a city, or chants spoken by temple keepers before tending sacred fires.
Others claimed they recorded celestial patterns that no longer align with the modern sky, star maps marked by the moon during early ages of the world. But most believed the scrolls held wisdom beyond knowledge, insights that could steady hearts, heal quiet sorrows, or reveal the subtle threads that bind breath to silence. We drift deeper. The whisper grows softer. On the left wall, a faint fresco emerges from the shadow, a figure holding a scroll, their face serene, the lamp beside them painted with delicate precision. Time has worn away most of the colors, leaving only the ghost of expression, the outline of a hand. Yet something in the posture suggests devotion, patience, and a gentle guardianship of unseen truths. Below the fresco lies a fragment of marble carved with a spiral, not unlike the ones at the entrance. Spirals often symbolized cycles, seasons, rituals, breaths. Here, they might mean the cycles of learning, knowledge taken in, knowledge released, knowledge returned to silence. As we move onward, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, or perhaps the memory of one. The room feels round, womb-like, shaped as though carved by water rather than tools. A pool of faint, golden light seems to shimmer in the center, though no flame exists to cast it. Dust swirls slowly, moving as if stirred by an unseen presence. This is where the phantom library breathes. Shelves once lined these walls, filled with scrolls arranged in gentle arcs. None remain now, but in the drifting golden haze, shapes emerge, as though memory gives them form. Shadows of scrolls, outlines of jars filled with ink, wooden rods wrapped in linen, the faint impression of wax seals glistening like tiny moons. We step closer. One scroll seems clearer than the others, its edges slightly sharper in this half-remembered light. Its linen cover bears a faint emblem, a star crossed by a single curved line. A celestial sign. Some believe this symbol marked scrolls containing rituals tied to the heavens, chants spoken at certain phases of the moon, or instructions for observing solstices. But most believed the scrolls held wisdom beyond knowledge, insights that could steady hearts, heal quiet sorrows, or reveal the subtle threads that bind breath to silence. We drift deeper. The whisper grows softer. On the left wall, a faint fresco emerges from the shadow, a figure holding a scroll, their face serene, the lamp beside them painted with delicate precision. Time has worn away most of the colors, leaving only the ghost of expression, the outline of a hand. Yet something in the posture suggests devotion, patience, and a gentle guardianship of unseen truths. Below the fresco lies a fragment of marble carved with a spiral, not unlike the ones at the entrance. Spirals often symbolized cycles, seasons, rituals, breaths. Here, they might mean the cycles of learning, knowledge taken in, knowledge released, knowledge returned to silence. As we move onward, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, or perhaps the memory of one. The room feels round, womb-like, shaped as though carved by water rather than tools. A pool of faint golden light seems to shimmer in the center, though no flame exists to cast it. Dust swirls slowly, moving as if stirred by an unseen presence. This is where the phantom library breathes. Shelves once lined these walls, filled with scrolls arranged in gentle arcs. None remain now, but in the drifting golden haze, shapes emerge, as though memory gives them form. Shadows of scrolls, outlines of jars filled with ink, wooden rods wrapped in linen, the faint impression of wax seals glistening like tiny moons. We step closer. One scroll seems clearer than the others, its edges slightly sharper in this half-remembered light. Its linen cover bears a faint emblem, a star crossed by a single curved line. A celestial sign. Some believe this symbol marked scrolls containing rituals tied to the heavens, chants spoken at certain phases of the moon, or instructions for observing solstices. The scroll feels alive, as though it breathes slowly. Its presence is soft yet unmistakable, a sleeping voice. We reach out, but the air grows thicker, resisting our movement. Not denying, not warning, simply reminding. Some knowledge prefers to dream rather than be awakened. The golden light shifts. The chamber's edges blur like ink dissolving in water. For a moment, the scrolls appear as clear as they might have been centuries ago, aligned, intact, waiting. Then the vision softens again, returning to shadows and dust. Scholars once sought this place. They believed it held answers to mysteries touched by other archives. They searched old diagrams, traced forgotten tunnels, examined structural anomalies. Some even claimed to hear faint sounds, the rustle of pages, the crackle of old oil lamps. But the hill remained silent, or perhaps it simply spoke in a language that scholars no longer remembered how to hear. We stand in the chamber's fading dream, feeling the warmth of imagined lamps, the quiet rush of ancient parchment moving gently within the air. There is no fear here, no urgency, only stillness wrapped in tenderness, a sanctuary for wisdom too soft, too fragile, too vulnerable to survive the noise of the waking world. It is said that some buildings do not stand, they dream. And when night deepens, when even the city's pulse softens beneath the veil of darkness, their dreams rise like ancient breaths warming the cold air. And so this chapter opens beneath a sky softened by starlight before the old Pantheon, whose great dome glows like a celestial shell washed gently by the moon. Its oculus, round and open to the heavens, gazes upward like a calm, unblinking eye fixed upon eternity. The stone around it breathes in slow rhythm, as though the building itself sleeps lightly, listening to the movements of stars. The piazza lies hushed. Shadows gather around the columns, settling into crevices that have weathered more than 2,000 years of footsteps, storms, prayers, and whispered awe. The Pantheon's great bronze doors rest slightly ajar, heavy yet patient, as if understanding that night visitors step not with ambition but with reverence. A thin line of moonlight catches on the threshold, forming a pale invitation. When we cross it, the world shifts. Inside, the stillness feels soft enough to touch. The dome swells above us, vast and round, embracing the shadows like a celestial womb. Starlight drifts through the oculus in a faint shaft, illuminating dust motes that swirl in slow, hypnotic spirals. Each mote moves as though guided by its own quiet intention, turning gently as it floats downward, dissolving into the air before it reaches the ground. The chamber breathes, slowly, deeply, its echo shaping the silence into something warm. It is said that the Pantheon holds many eras within its walls, layered like sediment beneath a river. Beneath the silence, we sense them. The pagan heart of Rome with its rituals and flames, the imperial age, when power carved its intentions into stone, the centuries of pilgrims who sought solace beneath this dome, leaving invisible footprints upon the marble. Time folds in on itself here, each era softening into the next, until all that remains is presence. We move deeper into the chamber, our footsteps barely audible against the marble. The floor glows faintly where the moonlight touches it, etching thin reflections that shimmer like water. Shadows drift across the walls like dark tides rolling gently over stone. The dome above resembles a sky carved by human hands, each square indentation a shallow echo of stars. Some believe the Pantheon was designed not merely as a temple, but as a cosmic instrument, a vessel through which celestial breath could be heard, felt, understood. The oculus was said to serve as a portal for the divine, though no one can say for certain what the word divine meant to those who built it. Perhaps light itself was the deity here. Sunlight, moonlight, rain, the falling dust of centuries. Perhaps the builders sought to bind heaven and earth with geometry so perfect it still confounds the modern world. Whispers tell us that the acoustics of the chamber once carried chants in spirals, rising gently into the dome until they faded into the sky. Some imagine choirs singing during early dawn ceremonies, their voices braiding with the morning light. Others believe the building held rituals quieter than music, gatherings where breath and heartbeat formed the true hymn. But the walls keep their secrets. They reveal nothing, offering only a presence that feels like the residue of sound. We pause at the center of the rotunda beneath the oculus. Here, the air feels different, heavier, yet clearer, as though shaped by centuries of intention. The Pantheon's vast roundness settles around us like a cloak. The marble beneath our feet carries the coolness of night, while the air just above it hums faintly, as if charged with memory. The oculus is dark now, reflecting only the faint shimmer of distant stars. Their light glides slowly across the stone, touching curves and corners with the gentlest of fingers. This soft illumination makes the interior feel alive, as though the building itself is exhaling in long intervals. When the air moves, the shadows shift, giving the illusion of unseen guardians drifting through the corners. Not threatening, not watchful, just ancient presences maintaining a silent vigil. Some guardians, it is said, remain unseen because they prefer not to disturb those who enter. Their role is not to rule, but to witness. The Pantheon in this interpretation becomes not a temple to gods, but a sanctuary for time itself, a place where stone listens, where breath slows, where memory rests. We drift toward one of the side chapels, our steps echoing faintly before dissolving into the roundness of the chamber. A faint glow lingers here, perhaps reflecting from a marble fragment or a worn piece of bronze. The air carries a scent of stone, dust, and something older, the faintest distinction of incense once burned in reverence. The frescoes that line the walls, though softened by time, still hold their shapes beneath the shadows. Faces look out with serene expressions, their features merging into the wall as though dreaming. In forgotten corners of the earth, silence often speaks louder than history. We move further, our fingers brushing the cool stone of a pillar. Its surface feels smooth, worn by centuries of hands that reached out in prayer, awe, or simple grounding. This pillar stands like a tree of stone, rooted in the floor, touching the dome with its unseen crown. The entire structure feels like a forest of marble, alive with the echoes of countless visitors whose hearts swelled beneath the immensity of the dome. When we return to the center, we gaze once more upward. The oculus appears larger now, almost oceanic, holding the night sky within its rim. A faint breeze slips through it, cool, delicate, brushing against our skin like the breath of a dream. The breeze causes the dust motes beneath it to drift upward in slow spirals, creating an illusion of stars rising from the earth. Perhaps this is what the builders intended, a space where heaven and earth would exchange breaths. The Pantheon becomes, in this moment, a womb of stillness. Its roundness holds time like water held in a cupped hand. Its columns stand like guardians of sacred quiet. Its air feels thick with unspoken questions. How such harmony of stone was shaped, what rituals unfolded beneath the stone before the world changed, what prayers echoed here during nights lost to memory. We linger, breathing slowly, letting our minds drift into the space between stillness and dream. The Pantheon shifts subtly, becoming not a structure, but a presence, an ancient being cradling the weight of centuries in its stone-clad embrace. The night grows deeper, shadows settle, the stars outside move in slow procession. The chamber becomes darker, yet warmer, as though the building draws us inward into its dreams. Then, gently, almost imperceptibly, the first hint of dawn begins to touch the threshold. The darkness lightens by a shade. The edges of the columns soften. The dome shifts from deep silver to pale gray. The oculus glows faintly, reflecting a sky not yet awake. This moment, the breath between night and dawn, feels like the heart of the Pantheon's dream. A soft pause between endings and beginnings. The building seems to rest here, in this delicate balance, like a sleeper hovering between sleep and waking. We stand quietly, honoring the hush. The marble beneath our feet feels warmer. The shadows withdraw. A faint shimmer emerges along the walls. The chamber inhales. Perhaps the Pantheon sleeps so deeply because it remembers too much. Perhaps it dreams because memory itself needs rest. Or perhaps its stillness is a gift, a reminder that some truths are meant to be felt, not understood. As dawn edges softly across the floor, we take one last breath within this sacred quiet. The oculus brightens, the dust dissolves into light. The old Pantheon stirs, not waking fully, but shifting slightly in its ancient dream. And as we step toward the threshold, the world opens gently, leaving us suspended in the luminous pause between what was, what is, and what drifts just beyond the reach of waking thought.
Thank you for drifting through time with Twilight Tale. The hidden gates of ancient Rome may be quiet now, but their whispers still rise through the centuries, reminding us that every stone, every shadow, every forgotten place holds a story. As you rest, may the stillness of the past bring peace to your present. If this journey eased your mind, feel free to return anytime you need a soft escape into history. Wishing you deep rest, gentle dreams, and a peaceful night. Good night from Twilight Tale.